Hello, I am Sam from Candy Consulting. Welcome to Sustain Talks, where I discuss the world of sustainability and CSR with an array of interesting people that I come across on my journey. Today, I am joined by Jess, Head of Sustainability and ESG Insights at Ipsos Mori. Hi, Jess, how are you?
Hi, Sam. Thanks so much for having me.
Good to see you. I'm going to just start with a brief intro and ask you to tell us more about your role and your experience.
Great, sounds good. So I am the head of sustainability and ESG insights at Ipsos Mori. So effectively what that means is I oversee all the work that we do in the climate change, environmental, sustainability, ESG space. So it's a massive topic. I oversee this over different sectors, so our public, private, and voluntary sectors, cross methodologies and cross service lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Busy job.
it's a massive topic with no clear definition of sustainability. It's always kind of moving. So it's a massive topic. Yeah,
and so many different acronyms used all the time, and it's constantly changing, and it's just even keeping up to date with everything. What projects are you working on at the moment?
There's different, an array of, I guess, different types of projects that we tend to work on. Right now, one of the biggest things is brand positioning and what industry and government should really do. Historically, they focused on a lot of behavior change, the say-do gap, and we've been really challenging that because it's not just about the public behavior change. That's one component of it, but the public really want government and industry leadership. And so the government and industry are beginning to realize, okay, they want leadership. What do I do and how do I do it? So we also have an advisory practice, Strategy 3 at Ipsos, that helps people to kind of shape what their strategy is around how they should approach sustainability.
It's really important. I saw you talk about this in a webinar, and actually I had made a comment about this, but talking about what people say and what they do, and I think you used a couple of examples about James Watt and Ellen DeGeneres, and, they're saying they're doing these great things, but you can't do it on one side and not do it on the other side, right?
Well, exactly. And sustainability historically has been kind of confined into environment, but we're seeing an increasing emergence between environment and the social and the blending of the two, and the governance aspect as well as how you run your business.
Yeah.
And things like planetary health, the idea that how we treat the planet effectively is how eventually comes back to us, and we're seeing that increase with the pandemic as well, where we have the majority of people around the world now thinking the pandemic in some way is attributable to how we treat the planet. So that has become something. So rather than just coming out with a recyclable new product, it's now about, well, how do you treat your staff?
Yeah.
How are you paying your taxes on time? Are you a reliable company, full stop? Because if you're not, then there's a risk that you're going to undermine your credibility in this space more broadly.
Yeah, absolutely true. I actually originally came across you because I did the Perils of Perception test, and that just blew me away. But do you want to talk a little bit more about that and what your biggest learnings were?
Yeah, so that's fascinating. So I kind of mentioned the say-do gap, and for those that aren't familiar with that, that's the discrepancy between what people say on what they actually do, or the values intention gap. And historically, that's been a really big challenge, or the challenge for industry and government. How do we get people to do what they care more than ever about the environment and climate crisis, which they do? It's completely underturned by the pandemic. Then why hasn't their behavior changed and their willingness to live more sustainably changed in the last 7 years? And it marginally has in the last 7 years, despite the fact there's massive concern. And then, that's the say-do gap, But the say-do gap is really a misnomer, and it's a catch-all phrase, basically, that within that wraps up all these other tangible barriers that industry and government should address. And one of those is what we call the believe true gap. And people understand and believe about this issue. I mean, we already talked about how complex the definition is alone, versus what is actually true about the issue. And our perils of perception of the environment survey that we did found that people, A, don't understand the issue, B, don't understand what are the most impactful actions that they can take and should take. So for example, they'll overestimate low impact actions when it comes to reducing their carbon emissions. So they'll overestimate things like recycling, and they'll underestimate things that are the most impactful things that they can do. Eating a plant-based diet, having one less child. Now that's not what we're advocating for, but it's awareness of, you know, do people really understand the issue? And the reality is they don't. The other is they don't really understand what the urgency is around the issue and actually how it affects the rest of our lives. So I've already mentioned that, yes, to some degree, people are making linkages between health because of the pandemic, but other things like migration and forced migration and internal displacement and refugees, we think of that, it tends to be positioned in the news as, oh, that's you know, political issues in a certain country. But actually, the climate crisis is the #1 cause for refugees and internal displacement. So we have to begin to think about this and talk about this and educate people on this topic so that we're able to make more informed decisions moving forward. And industry and government have a massive role to play in that as well.
Yeah, they really do. And I think that people don't really understand. I've been speaking a lot about the urgency of, you know, how serious this issue is and how quickly we need to make a change in the way that we live and the way that we work and what we do. So for you, I mean, you are very deep into sustainability and social responsibility, but what does it mean to you?
On a personal level?
Yeah.
On a personal level and on a more business level, it's the new imperative. So I tend to shy away from words like corporate social responsibility or brand purpose or things that somewhat hint as this being a nice to have add-on on the side.
Yeah.
Now an integral business imperative, meaning if your business isn't sustainable, it's not sustainable, because it's a matter of time before your competitors come in and do and seize this white space. And the more industry particularly can recognize that this is a commercial viability, you know, ESG, you know, investment, you know, the idea that ESG investments return less and that, you know, I'd like to do something that's nice in the environmental social governance space. I'd like to invest here, but I'm not sure if I'm actually going to get my financial investment. Well, that's proved to be wrong as well.
Yeah.
So before we begin to realize the commercial viability, then it becomes a more sustainable pursuit of sustainability in that way as well. So that's where I'm really passionate about, is communicating that imperative nature of we have to do something, and it's integral to our business, to our economy, to our livelihoods, to everything we do.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think the biggest challenges then in sustainability? What's about to, do you think that people just aren't getting it, or what do you think the challenges are?
I think the biggest challenge is guiding and helping industry and government to know what to do. Yeah. Because people fundamentally, according to all the research that we have, feel that they're doing enough in this space, rightly or wrongly, right? They feel like it's a shared responsibility, but they feel that they're over delivering on their fair share of the I won't call it a burden, but their fair share of responsibility. Yeah. So it's not surprising then that people don't want to pay more for an eco-friendly item. It's not surprising then that people don't want to go above and beyond to try to you know, set a separate recycling bin just for their Nespresso capsules because they don't fit in their natural cycle bin. So it's up to industry and government to look at what they can do on the one hand that is as frictionless as possible, that and oftentimes positions sustainability as a co-benefit rather than the benefit. So you know, switching to renewable energy, you could save money in your household, but then you're also doing something good for the planet, rather than assuming that people are just going to want to pay more for a green item or green product. The other, so there's kind of that. The other is the communication element, and this is a really difficult one that we're helping industry and government as well. How do you communicate this topic? Now, we've seen here in the UK challenges around communicating the pandemic. Yeah. Right? The nuances behind how to mobilize citizen citizens to do effectively what's the benefit of the greater good, and how confusing that message is. Then you take something like sustainability, where you have the environmental, social, and governance aspect, and there's, as we talked about, multiple definitions, and the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. Where do you begin? How do you tackle? And then on the added layer, there's a massive reputational element if you get this wrong, particularly for industry. So if you really mess this up, well, so that leads to a stagnation where a lot of the leadership skills and things that we're looking for, people are hesitant to do, because actually, if I take the risk and I try, I've never done this before, if I take the risk and I try to communicate the issue and I do it wrong, and there's many examples of that, there's now a massive reputational risk. So again, helping guide industry and government to become leaders in this space, in the short time frame that we have to act, is the biggest challenge, I think.
Yeah, that's like the sole reason that I wanted to do these interviews, was because I was speaking to people and having such amazing conversations, and I was like, I know so many people that don't even know what SDG stands for, and don't understand what a carbon emission is and how they reduce it. And I'm like, if I can get this message out there to as many people as possible, and give them some guidance where you even start, then I'm doing my bit too. This year obviously has had its challenges for everyone, but what's been the most important lesson that you've learned this year with the pandemic?
Non-sustainability related, you mean, just in general?
In general, and sustainability and socially. Yeah,
I think, the believe true gap is probably our biggest one in terms of the sustainability. That was really highlighted to us about understandings of the space, and you can be really, really passionate about this. But if you don't understand the issue, and not very many people do, I'm still learning as I go, to be fully honest. Sorry, my dog. So it's something that I'm learning as well as I go through. But one second. I'm just gonna tell my dog to be quiet. So so I think that has been a big learning for me, in terms of just realizing where we need to kind of just step back, and how we need to actually tackle this, and first and foremost with an education piece about where we're at, and what we need to do, and the urgency, as we've talked about. I think on a personal level, just kind of sustainability aside, this has been, as we were talking about before this recording started, the challenges of the pandemic, and me being an international citizen and missing my family and not being able to travel, but then also being confronted with the reality of, I have to travel to take long haul flights to go see my family. It adds another kind of challenge personally for me as well, where I'm thinking, okay, well, what are my actions? I want to see my family. I'm always going to that's going to be my priority, but also I want to make sure that I'm minimizing my own personal impact too. So there's a bit of a tension there, that's become really obvious to me as well. But this year hasn't been easy on many fronts. But those are the kind of the things that stand out to me the most.
Yeah, and then how do you overcome that? Do you think? I'm sure you're the same, but I'm offsetting last. But you can't get to net zero unless you have some kind of offsetting, right? Because you still have to, if you want to see your family, which of course you do, and you should, and, being sustainable, I also believe, is keeping the economy going. So you have to travel sometimes. What's the best option? To offset or to?
Well, that's one of the biggest challenge. Offsetting alone, I think, is not the answer. And 100% specifically when it comes to industry, because then it becomes a business as usual, and then I'm going to plant a few trees. Business as usual, and then I'm going to buy some carbon credits. We know business as usual doesn't work. That's how we got into this mess in the first place. So it's individuals like our mutual friends, Sarah Wilkins, Green Alliance, and what she's doing with renewable aviation fuel, and those initiatives that become so paramount, because again, it's industry and government that need to plug that say-do gap, because I do so much. But again, I know that whether it's me or whether that it's other people, you can't tell people not to go see their families. You can't tell people to, you know, I get the idea of this flight shame thing. I don't know if you've heard of flight shame. That's
yeah, I have. Yeah.
popular with younger people. You know, you don't have to go this, you don't have to. And I get that. I get that completely. On the other hand, understanding other cultures and not having an insular ideology, somebody who comes from the US and knows what it was like in the 80s and 90s in that world, is really important. Again, you know, you do what you can as an individual, you know, do carbon offsetting credits if you can, and try to cover your, you know, your own footprint as much as you can. Understand that one long haul flight undermines 2 years of eating vegan and a plant-based diet. So it is a massive deal.
Yeah.
Be taken seriously in the context of things. But at the same time, pressure industry and government to step up and make these changes as well, because it's not down to the individuals themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I do believe that, you know, as I said before, we have to, you know, I'm not a vegetarian, but I believe in eating less meat, and I believe in eating less fish and changing my diet and trying vegetarian options, which I guess 5 years ago I might not have thought about. But actually it's about what can you do and where can you do it, but still to live your life to carry on and make the economy sustainable as well. If someone's starting out, I mean, you know, so many people are at the very, very early stages. What's the best tip that you'd say to them? You just want to get into being a more sustainable company or being more sustainable at home. What's the first things that they should look at?
Learn. I mean, that's the biggest thing, is you can be sent down a rabbit hole of what you think is the right or most impactful actions, and actually they aren't. First and foremost. So, you know, reading books like Michael Mann's New Climate Wars, you know, familiarizing yourself with, and it's in a way it feels unfair, you know, about an issue, it shouldn't be a full-time job to try to figure out what the right thing to do is. But at the same time, there is such a massive education gap that we've discussed around this believe true component, that we really need to think about, you know, are our efforts in the right place? Because I see quite frequently the cotton bud ban, plastic straw ban, for example. Yeah. Right. I mean, important, but there are other more important things that we could and should be addressing as well. So I think it's, again, for me, it's about the education element. The other is, for those that are pursuing a career in sustainability, it's that cross-sector expertise. Yeah. Because the sectors need to work together. Yeah. Need to complement each other. So it's not about permission, it's about leadership, and it's about clarity of your message, and it's government holding industry accountable, and it's about industry plugging the gaps where government fails. And I see it happen on both sides all of the time. Yeah. Again, having that cross-sector understanding is really integral. Yeah, there's so many different learnings. I speak to so many people from different industries, from the travel industry, from the built environment, and you think they could learn so much from each other as well. Who, I mean, you mentioned Michael Mann, but who inspires you in sustainability or socially responsible? Who should people be looking up on LinkedIn or following or watching their webinars? Yeah. Apart from you. Michael E. Mann is, I just think he's great. I just absolutely think he's great. He has a book called The New Climate Wars that I mentioned before that I recommend. Interestingly enough, when the Bill Gates book came out, I had 30 people writing me about how interesting and I haven't read it in full honesty, but the snippets of information that I've extracted from that, I think are slightly not as well supported by at least our research at Ipsos. So things like technology is the primary solution that's going to save us from the climate crisis. That's a small minority of people that believe that, and it tends to be correlated with climate skeptic countries. So I'm not, Bill Gates supports that. Obviously he comes from a tech background, and that's where he's really familiar, but I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that that's one small component of that. And I know Michael Mann criticizes that to some extent as well. And he's definitely someone to follow. There's so many youth activists out there I like to support as well, because this is, in reality, this is a generational thing.
It is.
The people that are going to have to live out the impacts of climate change are the future generation. And it unfairly impacts them. And so I try to, whether it's Greta Thunberg or whether it's activists in the area, I try to support them and to listen and hear what they're saying, because they're coming at it from a more or less survival standpoint, because it's impacting them in a way that it doesn't the older generations.
Yeah, they say that 85% of millennials, when looking for a job, are looking at the social impact of the company that they're going to work for. And I really think that that's a big thing, that if companies are looking to get good talent, then that's going to have an impact on them, isn't it?
Well, and every job should theoretically be a sustainability job. I mean, at the end of the day, it's literally everything we do.
Yeah.
And so, we're headed hopefully towards a place of every job has a sustainability component to it.
Yeah.
And so it'll be interesting to see, but we're talking about net zero in 2050, and that's so far. When you're seeing, I'm from the Pacific Northwest in the US, and you're seeing the massive heat waves there that are killing people, and what's happening in Canada, and what's happening just around the world in Pakistan, where people are dying because of these global high temperatures. And it's like, when will it click that, we don't have 30 years to sort this out? We need to act now.
I think that, goals for net zero by 2050 is too late. It's got to be 2030. And every single person that I'm seeing on LinkedIn or wherever I'm reading about, the people that know and the scientists are like, we need to act right now. Okay, last question. If you could ask people to make one change, what would it be?
It's a hard one. Because, there's a list of different impactful actions, and some of them are going to be feasible for people and some of them aren't. Switching to renewable energy in your homes, probably one of the most universal and impactful things you can do. You could say eating, as we talked about, eating a more complex diet is really important. People need to understand that that's actually more impactful than eating local. Although it can be kind of confusing. But again, it's also, partly it's also just educating yourself. And I sound like a broken record.
No, you don't.
But here, an example, and I've given this example before in presentations, but a massive UK retailer got rid of all the plastic packaging on all their produce. Yeah. And you'd think, oh, great, I'm going to support this retailer because they got rid of all the plastic packaging on their produce. They're listening to me as a consumer, etc. But actually, it increases the spoilage and the carbon footprint of some of the produce if it doesn't have plastic packaging.
Yeah, wow.
Some type of packaging, right? Yeah. Not saying that plastic packaging is the right answer, but again, as a consumer, your biggest impact that you can make is what companies you support, right? Where your purchasing power. So when you become more educated, you can then leverage more impact by supporting the businesses that are doing the right thing and in the right area. So in a way, it's very counterintuitive and it's very indirect in terms of just, turning off the lights or taking shorter showers. Yeah, but your biggest leverage is putting that pressure on industry and government to actually make the most impactful changes that they can make. Yeah, wow, thank you. Last time I spoke to you, I left fascinated, learned so much from you. If people want to get in touch with you, can they reach out to you on LinkedIn? Are you happy to be approached? Yeah, LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter, Jess at Ipsos, or email me. It's on the website and everything. So have conversations and pick this up. It's such a fascinating topic, and it really needs as many people as possible involved and fight.
Yeah, it has been wonderful. Thank you so much for giving me the time. I look forward to putting this out there and continuing the conversation, continuing to educate. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Sam. Thank you.
Okay, take care.